Hey guys, so I thought I'd take some time to just quickly review the NRG Weibo series because although it's a three-game just shit stomp, it's actually a pretty interesting series in terms of the way NRG approached the draft. They were just missing like a couple of things in order to basically take it to the next level. Like it wasn't by any means like a super bad draft by their side. It was like a valiant attempt, if you want to call it that, right? And it kind of starts with like in each of the games, there's a little bit of that moment. Like they clearly had strategies prepared. So did Weibo clearly because there were some things that NRG really didn't address that Weibo picked, but at the same time, especially in each game, every time they lost, they switched up their strategy, right? And I think that's a really good way to take advantage of a different environment in the best of five. So we'll start with game one, where there's nothing really that interesting for the first bit. These bans are relatively going to stay consistent because this is what the teams have determined to be very oppressive for them. This makes sense. So Xayah ban, Maokai ban are very standard. The J4 ban is interesting because it's not banned that often, but it plays into their strategy of picking things like Aphelios. So I think especially by game 3, NRG might have been able to take a hint there. For NRG side, these are the bans they probably kept stable throughout. The Renata is probably something from inside information like draft or scrims that they just felt like they couldn't deal with, so they just decided to get rid of it, which is a little bit awkward because they opted to basically lose one ban the entire time, where Renata has very clear weaknesses. So it's probably like a stylistic thing in the way NRG like to play the game. It's the same thing with the Rumble. They just don't want to deal with the blind, and it seems that if they're having Dokla play weak side like this, getting rid of things like that is going to be ideal, right? It's not like Renekton where it's not where it's manageable. Rumble's a little bit harder to deal with just because of his output. And the Azir usually is for the Orianna opener. My concern in this first game is that they pick Aphelios Rell here on 1-2, right, after the Orianna, and NRG thinks it's actually a good idea to pick Senna Tom in this case. What's different from this draft compared to their previous draft? Let me pull it up. NRG versus G2. In the other cases, they play against Kai'Sa Rell, right? Kai'Sa Rell, the only identity is really playing forwards and being able to annihilate the backline, right? In which case Senna is good at choking out. But in this case, a champion like Aphelios has a bit of a different champion identity. And even though this is a counter pick, it doesn't seem to slot very well here in this case because the weakness to Senna Tom, understandably, is lanes that are able to handshake and basically stat check it later, right? It's very good at being impenetrable, but in exchange for less damage overall. A champion like Aphelios is clearly very happy, like chilling here with this, especially with a champion like Melio as well, right? It could be if we were in a meta where Senna Tom was all encompassing and it just did not matter, it would make sense. But Weibo clearly had an idea against this, and because of that, it was a little bit hard for them to play out this lane, right? They matched the lane. They actually Senna Tom, instead of diluting the lane, their objective in lane is actually to try to dominate lane, which is not really possible because these champs are not meant to quote unquote dominate lane like a true lane bully would, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It just seems like it was not the right tool for the job. And that's probably what got them here, right? Same with did they not blind K'Sante here on 4? They blinded K'Sante here as well, and then they still pick Renekton into it because they feel like they just need some sort of frontliner or some pressure there. So it's just a couple of awkward picks that make it feel like they couldn't really do anything this game. And I can show the example where they were doing fine and they're equal gold. But overall, the pressure is on NRG to really do much here. And clearly, compared to previous laning phases, the way Weibo is playing out this lane, they're absolutely chilling. Like Senna Tom should not be losing tower like this, you know. And they didn't even die. So that's where kind of the issue lies. It's like Aphelios should not be free scaling, and that just comes off of the back of they picked the wrong tool for the job. And eventually, I think this is what lost in this game, to be honest. That's the main thing. but it was not a bad idea, right? They thought it was good, but it just shows me that they didn't fully understand like the purpose of the pick. Now we go to game 2. Energy pick blue again, of course. Same bans. It's going to be same opener. So the draft is the exact same up to R2. It's not that Aphelios is God, like like an insanely good champion or anything. Weibo just think it's a good champ to deal with NRG potentially, right? And the Relflex is always something to think about. They pick it. They know they've already revealed it once, but it gives NRG something to chew on, if that makes sense. They're threatening this throughout the entire draft, right? Flex picks scale the earlier they are picked, because NRG has to keep thinking about when they're going to pivot. This time they go for a more aggressive route and they pick K'Sante on weak side, and they're investing their resources into AD counterpick, AD support counterpick, right? But Weibo have R5 and they used it for support last time, and they can use it for support again this time. So I think what's more important is you could probably just pick a generalist support and then counterpick AD instead of having to blind top. But it's not like that. It's not that bad. They counterpick AD. This time it's Kai'Sa, and then they go Aphelios Milio again. Quote unquote, this time it's a little bit better, but in terms of champions like interacting with each other, out of all the champions that are front to back that deal with engage like this, Aphelios is probably one of the best, because he is Severum Shield plus Overheal, so he's extremely tanky, plus he has Chakram, so he gives him extremely high DPS output, and he's very efficient against champions like this. So again, it's like a little bit awkward, right? You see this, it's kind of a similar deal. They think they never chose to match front to back in this case. They can pick champions that like outduel it in a sense, just do its job better. Because Aphelios is not the best champion in the game. Otherwise, it would just be B1. It just means that NRG don't have tools to deal with it. It's not bad by any means, but I think it didn't give them the playing field that they were looking for. It's the same with Milio. There's like this. I'm pretty sure this champ has not been played at all until this point, and I think it's good because it's challenging the meta. But it just means that what's not important is any certain priority pick, except for maybe a couple like Orianna. It's more so just picking the right tool for the right comp and being able to pivot your comp as much as possible, and then understanding what is the actual champion. Sitting down and thinking about what is the actual champion or champions that's going to address your issues or the enemy's strengths, and then basically making the most of that. So in this case, sorry. Now they probably felt like they were encouraged to engage here onto Weibo this time. But now Weibo can pretty much chill for the most part. They can get a couple kills here and there because like this is basically the nature of the matchup they signed up for. But as soon as Weibo are given some time, the rest of their comp is just going to prevent this Kai'Sa comp from doing anything. Like we have Rell, Nico, Aatrox. They're all playing into perfect conditions pretty much, at the cost of a blind pick of Aphelios, right? So at this point, this draft, even though they had counterpick in a couple places, puts NRG on a huge timer. Even though it's not like, and it's okay to have a timer, but it's not like a good timer. You know, they don't have much to play through. So similar issue, but again, nice attempt. Game 3, they pivot again, which I like. They ban Aphelios, which is not the way I would have approached this situation. But clearly, they lost 2 games in a row against it, and they don't want to deal with it. So, all good. And they B1 Rumble, which is honestly okay. It is a strong top laner, so understandable. The Ezreal Karma response here is probably the best response they could have given. so far. And they match it against Caitlyn Heimer. Small shift in the bans this time though. Nico banned instead of J4. So that means because of that means that Aphelios will be gone. I mean, they have to ban Aphelios, or they're more encouraged to, and they ban Orianna, which is actually good. And Weibo will take Maokai this time because it was available. The only issue here is that they have too many things that they're scared of, I guess, from NRG. And the only two things that are going to defeat NRG in this point are hard engage to the point where they can't deal with they slam Ezreal, or poke match. And in this case, they left poke match open, right? And the Yone makes sense on paper as well, because Weibo's decidedly playing backward, and they're trying to threaten this Caitlyn a lot. It's her safety. But it really leaves a lot of weaknesses in terms of what your comp wants to do. Like, you're totally okay with matching poke here and just forcing them to play forward because this is a backwards comp. But because they opt into the Yone, plus they left things like Jace open, like heavy pick open or heavy poke open, now their win condition, which was looking good in first phase, they didn't eliminate the tools that would counter them enough. So now they're in a bit of an awkward spot. This is also probably due to the fact that they needed an AD mid laner. But to be honest, if you're Palafox, I'm sure you could go Jace here yourself, to be honest, and it would look pretty strong. So it kind of hits two birds with one stone. So it's just like these drafts are so close to greatness. It's just they're missing a couple things, or they pick it just slightly early, or things like that just make it just a touch awkward. And in this case, they have really good lane. This is probably still their best draft. But the only issue is probably the blind Yone. And the fact that they didn't address their bans heavily enough. They were scared of too many things. So, in the end, although gameplay definitely contributes to this, I just want to speak from a draft perspective in terms of how they set themselves up, because it does matter. When players are like so close in skill to each other, well, I guess maybe not in this case, but like, you know what I mean? Like they're all pros, and they have the margin, objectively speaking, is not like absolutely insane, right? It's like these little things. And draft is a big thing, considering in the world of little things, right? So that's all I want to speak on this series. Hope that makes sense to all. I'll see you in the next one.